Hi everyone, welcome to today's session on Revit 2025 features. Today we'll be going through a number of features which generally fall into three main categories. The first being sheet and text features, the second being family features, and the third being the Toposolid features. First off, we're going to have a look at the sheet and text features, and in that we're actually just going to have a quick look at the search improvements which have been added to the project browser. So if I am able to type something in here, such as WD, you'll see that the returned results actually include everything that is underneath the parent object, as well as what's in the child object in the search. In Revit 2024, it had only returned, say, this result down here because it actually had a direct text string search. So that's a very welcome improvement to the way that the search works. Another project browser type element is the addition of sheet collections. So sheet collections work like folders in your project browser. So we're able to create new sheet collections by right-clicking on sheets, clicking on new sheet collection, which is then created one down here called collection 1. And I'm just going to rename that one. Now, when I'm naming these the same as I've got my views, just for consistency. So that's created a sheet collection. I've got a couple in here that I've prepared earlier. So we've got some for sketch design. Now we've got one for working drawings. We've got one for our project repository items and our planning application items. So what you can do now is you can actually drag the elements or the other sheets into these sheet collections. So we've got a few working drawing type sheets here. Drag those in. And now they're sort of grouped into that. We're calling it a folder. Another additional benefit for these sheet collections is that if you do have a sheet that is named the same, I'm just going to drop this into planning application. This one here. Well, I guess the point to be made is that you can actually have the same numbered sheets now in your Revit file. So I can have A101 for this one, and you can see under working drawings, we actually have A101 as well. So that's going to be quite beneficial in terms of when you're creating multiple options for your clients or working your way through different stages of your project. Okay, heading over to a detail now. We now have the multiple align tool, which used to be available only through an additional add-in or series of add-ins. So we can see here we've got a detail. The text has sort of been thrown across the page, somewhat messy. What you can do is you can select the text or multiple text items, and we have these multiple align tools. So we can align to the top, to the left, to the right, to the center, to the middle, and you can distribute items evenly, horizontally and vertically as well. So if we're going to fix up this text, we might just get the top one at the very top and the bottom at the very top, align them, distribute them vertically, and then you'd align them as well, say to the left. And to repeat on the other side, you might do something similar where you distribute evenly and align. So that's going to help tidy up your drawings. Whilst we're on sheets, the last item sort of to note is that we can now do background exports of PDFs. So if we go to File, Export PDF, there's this tick box down here, Export in Background, which you can now use to export your sheets whilst you're still working in your project model. I think that's going to be very welcomed by anyone working on larger projects when you're generally get tied up when you hit export on a large project. So I'm just going to run that now. And we're going to bring over my exports folder and just show you that there's nothing in here yet. And we'll just check back in a little while to see how that's progressing. So it will take a moment for it to think, but now it's freed up and it's processing. There's no file just there just yet. Okay, heading over to the next stack of features, the family features. So the first one that I'd like to show you through is the auto wall join tool. We're going to head into a floor plan. Let's go into our working drawings here. Okay. And I might just hide off my topography until we get that sorted. And we're going to go into thin lines mode here. Actually, better yet, let's go into a bathroom view. Close all hidden. But again, we'll hide our topography. And I'm going to open up a 3D view of this space so you can get a sense of how this tool works and tile those two windows. Okay, so this next tool is for joining walls automatically. What we can do is you can start a new wall. I'm just going to create similar on this tiled surface here. So CS, create similar. And that's going to allow me to pick whether I'd like to auto join or not auto join up the top here during the inside the modify place wall contextual tab. Now, typically speaking, in previous versions of Revit, if you were to draw this wall, this tile wall across the surface, you'd see that it would mask the door, and then you'd have to go back and you'd have to use the join tool to join these two walls together. So click that one there and then the door would be cut. I'll just undo that. Now, as you guessed, when you go to draw this wall in, you can now use the auto join tool. So I'll click auto join or click it one surface to the other end, and that's going to automatically join those and draw the wall at the same time. That's going to be a massive time saver for anyone who uses this workflow in terms of creating additional finishes on top of existing walls. There is an additional tool in there, auto join and lock. So I'm going to repeat that action. This time I'm going to use auto join and lock. I'm going to pick that wall there to there. And that's going to do the same thing, except this time it's going to lock the wall as well. So you can see the little lock come up. So if this wall was to shift, you can see that the wall moves along with it. We'd advise probably to be careful of using constraints in projects. Generally, they can lead to issues and things getting deleted accidentally. So if you'd be using this feature, we'd probably just recommend using the just auto join rather than auto join and lock. Okay, another feature with walls, if I head over to a ground floor plan here, and we'll now close this off, is the ability to toggle the wraps. So the end wrapping. So when you're drawing a wall with a wrapping on it, you now have this ability to turn off the wrapping on either end. So we've got allow or disallow end wrapping. So here we have just a cladding with a basic battens and a plasterboard. You might want to return it at one end and not return it at the other. You can now toggle those ends. Now just be mindful that this only works on end wrapping. So wrapping at ends must be turned on. You must pick as well, interior or exterior. It does not work on wrapping at inserts, so that's for doors and windows and the like. Okay, on to the next family feature is the ability to have arrays of 0 or 1. So previously in older versions of Revit, anytime that you had an array that went down to 1 or 0, the array would break because there was a minimum requirement of 2. Now they've enabled the ability to change the array down to 1 or 0 without the family breaking. So for instance, this array of seats, we can go down to 2, obviously, as before, but now we can actually go down to 1 and even 0. But mind you, if you go down to 0, just make sure that you have something to select because it does make everything disappear from the family. Now, it's important to note that that array only works in the family environment. So if you do an array in the project environment, you will not have this feature. Okay, next feature is inner mullion loops for mullion profiles. Okay, so I'm just going to draw a curtain wall over to the side here, and we're going to apply this external glazing, system 1, and we'll just have a look at how this one works. Okay, so previously you used to only be able to have a loop, a single loop for your mullion profile. Now you can actually have a looped mullion and just mind the offset, but you can see there I've actually included the interior of that mullion profile there. I'd be hesitant to recommend this. It's kind of actually a little bit concerning that they've added this as a feature. It may come in handy, but I can see that this would add a lot of extra complexity to your model and therefore would be advising against using this feature for your projects. And instead, when you have an extrusion, relying on the detail of that particular element as opposed to putting it into the 3D. Okay, finally over to the Toposolids enhancements. A number of enhancements in this space, and it's probably where Revit has put, or Autodesk has put a lot of their energy. So much so that anyone who's experienced or been playing around with Revit 2024 will know how fundamentally broken the Toposolids feature is, and it's still broken as at this point today, even in the 0.2 release. Some of the features that are missing are the ability to snap to DWG elements in Revit 2024 at least. Thankfully, they have now resolved that. So when you have a CAD, we'll just sort of bring one in now. Okay, I'm just going to link in DWG. Just going to pick this current view only. Origin to origin relator. Okay. And previously, when you were to create a Toposolid from sketch, and I'll just do a basic outline here, modify sub-elements, or we better bring that to the foreground. Modify sub-elements, add a point. Believe it or not, you were not able to snap to any points. So you weren't able to snap to these important intersections. As I mentioned, thankfully, that has now been resolved, and you can actually, as you can see, snap directly to those elements quite easily. So that's basically defines that Revit 2025 is worth getting on. If you're on 24, I'd pretty much just say, just skip 24 altogether because of this particular feature. Another welcome feature is the ability to snap to X, Y, Z coordinates. So when you're modifying your sub-elements, it's always been a bit of a tricky tricky thing to do was to actually get your coordinates or get your points to align with your existing elements. Now you can use snap XYZ, and you can actually snap to 3D model elements, and that will make it much easier to actually bring your topo up to. Oh yeah, that's probably an ignorable one. Your topo up to your building pad or your slab, for instance. So I'll do that here. So we're just going to bring that up around like that, so you can batter it off. So that's excellent. That's something that's going to be a bit of a game changer. Another game changer in this space is the ability to excavate. So when you've got your Toposolids selected, you now have the Excavate tool available to you. So I'll click Excavate, and we're going to then select our slab here. In actual fact, before I do that, let's just pop a 3D section box over this so you can see the current situation. Okay. As you can see, our Toposolids running straight through our building. Normally you'd have to put a pad in for something like this, but we can now use this Excavate tool, pick our slab, and that will actually excavate down to that point. And obviously if that slab was to move, that excavation will update automatically. Another very welcome addition to the Toposolids tools. Some other sort of advancements in this space include the ability for the shaft tool to now cut only a portion of the Toposolid. So if I go into, say, my site plan here, and I pop in a shaft, tick. Let's go find that shaft. There it is. Now, this was sort of a workaround that people were using to generate pads, considering how bad the pads tool was, or the cutting elements tool was for topos in 2024. They're using this shaft tool, but what it was doing is it was actually cutting all the way through the surface, irrespective of how deep it was. Anytime it touched, it cut the whole thing. Thankfully, they've now changed that, and that has now you now have the ability to just cut the portion out of it that you need. Okay. Now, one thing just to note with the Excavate tool, which is also quite welcome to the suite, is the calculation of the excavation volume from the topo surface. So when you select the floor, for instance, that is using the Excavate tool, you now have a parameter in here which actually tells you the excavation volume on the Toposolid from this particular floor that you have selected. So you can actually see that we've got 73 odd square meters, cubic meters of soil that we're excavating as part of that excavate. Now, if you'd like to remove that excavation, you can always go back to the Toposolid. Select the Toposolid and then remove excavation, like so. And that will just return the Toposolid to how it was.